Alright, welcome back guys. So in the last video we saw how we can register for an account through Next.js. Now what we're going to see is how we can log in. So this is the video where we're going to be dealing with HTTP only cookies. So this should be a pretty exciting video for a lot of you. So let's go ahead and now get started. First thing I want to do is I want to make a login page. So that way we actually have a page where we have a form where we can log in. So inside of my pages folder, I'm going to create a new file called login.js. That way once we go to /login, we're going to load up this component. Now this component, it's going to be quite similar to our register page. So to make this easier, I'm going to open up my register page. I'm going to do a command A. I'm going to copy. I'm going to go back to my login page and paste in here. Then I'm going to close that side window for now. And then we're going to make some adjustments here. So first off, I'm going to call this login page instead of register page. So that's going to be my first little tweak. So there we are. And then as for this register success piece of Redux state, this is something I do not need. This is something I only needed inside of the register page. Although one thing that I will need is my is authenticated piece of Redux state. So I'm going to do const is authenticated, which is going to be use selector state arrow function state.auth.is authenticated. I just want to make sure that I spelled these correct. There we go. And then I'm going to use this so that when you're authenticated, you get redirected to the dashboard. So that's another page that I need to make. So I'm going to open up this side window and this pages. I'm going to just make a dashboard.js. So it's going to be my dashboard page. And I'll do something like const dashboard. And for now, I'm just going to return some JSX. Actually, I might as well bring in my layout and return that. So I'm just going to import layout from my higher order components layout. Then I'm going to have that component here. And then between here, for now, I'll have something like dashboard. And then this we're going to tweak a lot more later. And then I'm going to have my title. This is going to be httpOnly auth dashboard. I'm going to have the content, which is going to be dashboard page for HTTP only tutorial app, something like that. And then just need to make sure I have my default export. So export default dashboard. So there we are. We're going to come back to this page later on, but in this video, I want to focus on this login. So in order to log in, the only thing that we need is a username and a password. So I can remove both this first name and last name, and I can remove this repassword. We do not need these. And then as for the destructuring, I can remove these two, and I can remove the repassword. Then the next thing I'm going to do is scroll down, and then instead of create an account, I can do something like log into your account. And maybe I can have capitals here just to make it look a little nicer. And then this first name form group, I'm going to delete that. This last name form group, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to keep the username form group. I'm going to keep the password form group. And then I'm going to get rid of this confirm password form group. And then instead of create account, I can just do log into your account. And then what I can do is right above this return, I can have an if check. And then I can check if is authenticated is true. And then if that's the case, I can redirect to the dashboard. So in order to redirect, I need to bring in router. So I'm going to do that, say, right at the top here. So I'm going to import use router, which is coming from next router. And then right below here, I can do const router is use router. And now I can do my redirects. So I can go back down where I have this if check. And then what I can do is router.push and then /dashboard. So this will bring me to my dashboard page. And then on top of this is authenticated, I also want to have some more protection checks just to make sure that router even exists. So what I can do is check if type of window is not equal to undefined in quotes like this, and is authenticated is true. And then if this right here passes, I can rest assured that router exists. And then if is authenticated is also true, then I'll do this redirect. And then also instead of register page, it would be good to say login page. So I'm going to make that tweak there. And then the next step would be, instead of dispatching this register, we want to dispatch some sort of login. So I'm going to remove this, and then I'm also going to comment this out for now, and then we're going to come back to this. And then let me also run my backend and my front end. So I'm going to navigate into my backend. I'm going to make sure that my database is running, so mine is. So I'm going to activate my virtual environment, and then I'm going to run my server. And then I'm going to open up another terminal where I'm going to navigate into my front end, do an npm run dev, and that's going to go ahead and run my front end. So I'm going to close up that terminal, and then I can now go into my localhost 3000. And then I can load up this application. So the next thing I want is to have a login button here, which is going to load up my login page. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up my components, navbar, and then let's add in this logic. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to copy this list item where I have the register. And then below it, I can just paste this and then put in login. And then I'm going to select this register part, do a Command D, and change both of these to be login. So that way I can have a button where I can now navigate to my login page. So here it is, my login page. Now we just need to have actual functionality. So when I put in my username and password and click this button, then I'm going to log in. And maybe instead of log into your account, I think it might be better to just put in login. So I'm going to make that little tweak. So I'm going to go to this button and just change it to be login. I think that would look a little bit nicer. Yeah, that looks better. And now let's go ahead and implement an endpoint, which is going to allow us to log in. So I'm going to open up this API account and then create a new file inside of here, which I'm going to call login.js. And then when we hit API/account/login from our Next.js client, then we're going to hit this endpoint, which is going to make a request to our real Django API where we're going to log in. And then in order to do stuff with http-only cookies, I'm going to use a library called cookie. So I'm going to stop running my front end. I'm going to do an npm install save cookie. I'm going to let that install. So there we are. And then I'm going to rerun my front end. And then right here, I have opened the Google search where I search for npm cookie so that I can click on this package here and we can take a look at it. So this right here is what's going to allow us to have functionality for cookies. So if we scroll down, here you can see this cookie.serialize, and this lets you serialize a cookie name value pair into a set cookie header string. So this is how you can send off an HTTP only cookie along in the header. Now, in order to actually accomplish this, there's a couple properties that we need to set for this. And then we can go through some of these. We have domain, which we don't really have to specify because by default, no domain is set, and most clients will consider the cookie to apply to only the current domain, so that's fine. And then we have expires, which is one that we want to use. And then this is going to specify the date object to be the value for the expires set cookie attribute, and by default, no expiration is set. So this is what we can use to have the HTTP only cookie expire after a given period of time, and we can match this to be the exact same to what we set inside of our backend. Because remember, inside of our backend, if I open up my backend, HTTP only auth settings.py, we have that JWT setting where we have the access token lifetime and the refresh token lifetime, and then we can just match this with the cookie we have in the browser. And then this right here is one of the properties that we want. So this specifies the Boolean value for the HTTP only set cookie attribute, and then when truthy, the HTTP only attribute is set. Otherwise, it is not. So this is all you need to do in order to have this be an HTTP only cookie. And then here they give you a little note to be careful because compliant clients will not allow client-side JavaScript to see the cookie in document.cookie. Now this is something we actually want, so that's why we're going to set this. And then there's some other stuff here, like let's say path. And then this path attribute indicates a URL path that must exist in the requested URL in order to send the cookie header. So we could do something like /API/account/. So we can have that be required to be in the path in order to actually send the cookie in the request. And then same site. This is another property that we want to utilize. And same site takes a couple possible values. And then the ones you will work with are strict, lax, and none, which are these ones right here. And then in particular, we want to use strict because with strict, the cookie is sent only to the same site as the one that originated it. So in other words, the one with the exact same domain. And this is something that you can use to help mitigate CSRF. So this right here is an absolute must when we go ahead and set this cookie in our header. And then we also have secure. And then secure is just a Boolean value. And then when it's truthy, the secure attribute is set, otherwise it's not. And all this means is that you need to have an HTTPS connection in order to send the cookie. So when we're in development, we're not going to have HTTPS, so you're going to have this set to false. But in production, once you actually have an SSL certificate and you use HTTPS, then you're going to want this to be true. So now that we understand these properties a little more, now let's go back to our application and start implementing our login functionality. So I'm going to close up this terminal right now, and I have this login open, which is the login inside of the API/account folder. And let's implement this endpoint. So first off, I'm going to import cookie from cookie. So this is that package that we just installed. I'm also going to import my API URL, which is going to come from my config folder. So I have to go up 3 directories to access my config and then index, and that way I can use this. And then I'm going to do my export default async request response arrow function. And then this right here, I want it to be a post request that's sent off to this endpoint. And then that post request, it's going to contain JSON data, which is the username and the password. So I'm going to grab that username and password, and that's going to come from my request.body. And then I'm going to turn this back into JSON data and send it off to my endpoint on my Django backend API, which is that API/token/route, which is going to give us that access and refresh token. So I'm going to make a constant body, and then I'm going to do JSON.stringify, and then I'm going to JSON stringify the username and the password. And then after that, I'm going to have my try catch where I make my API request. And then another thing I forgot to do is I should actually wrap all of this inside of an if check where I make sure that the request.method is equal to post. And then if it's not a post request, then I'm just going to send back an error response. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. And then I'm going to fix up this indenting. And then in the else case, I'm going to do response.setHeader, allow, and then post. And then I'm going to return a response with a status of 405. And then also pass some JSON to this where I have an error. And then here I'm actually going to use backticks so that way I can do method. And then I can bring in that request.method not allowed. That way if they use something like a get request, then you can get method get not allowed. Then with that, we can go back to here. And then I can have my try catch. And then inside of the try part, this is where I'm going to make that actual API request to our Django backend server. So I'm going to do const API response is equal to await. And again, I'm calling this API response just so I don't have conflicts with this response here. And I'm going to use the fetch API in this case. I can have my backticks where I can bring in that API URL, which is our localhost 8000. And then our endpoint is API/token/. And then I'm going to set the method to be post because that's what Django REST Framework Simple JWT expects for this endpoint. And then I'm going to have the headers where I'm going to have my accept header. It's going to be application JSON. And I'm also going to have my content type because I'm going to be sending off as JSON data the username and the password. And then I'm also going to send the body. So there we are. And then we can check, was this successful? So if API response.status is equal to 200, that dictates that this was successful. If we get anything other than a status of 200, then this was not successful. And then if we're not successful, I can just return a response.status with API response.status. That way we match the same status code as our Django backend API. And then I can send back some JSON where I can have an error. And then as for this error, I can just get the error that our Django backend API would send off. So in order to actually see that, what I have to do after here is const data is await API response.json. That way I can grab that data, and then we can grab the error value that's inside of that data. And actually, now that I think about it, we might not actually have this because this isn't one of our custom endpoints. This is actually simple JWT's endpoint. So instead, what I'm going to do is just have a custom message, which is going to say something like authentication failed. So that should be good. And then I'm going to have something very similar inside of this catch. So I'm just going to paste that in here. And then instead of having this API response.status, we're not going to have this if it fails. So instead I'm just going to do a 500 status code. Then I'll just have something here like something went wrong when authenticating. So that should be good. And now in the case where we get a status of 200, this is where we're going to go ahead and serialize this cookie and then place it inside of that set cookie header. So the way that we can do that is with response.setHeader. And then I can have set-cookie. And then because I'm going to have an access and refresh token, here I'm going to have an array. So then inside of this array, what I can do is have cookie.serialize. And then here I'm going to serialize the access token. And then that's going to be data.access. So we're going to grab that value. And then we're going to set some of those properties that we need. So then here on our backend API, when we parse this cookie, we're going to get the access token through this right here, which is access. If I call this something else like JWT, then when I parse this cookie, I would access the access token with this name here. But I'm going to call it access in my case. And then I'm going to pass some of those properties that we need. So httpOnly, I'm going to set to true. So that way we cannot access these values with JavaScript. I'm going to set secure to be false. That way we don't need HTTPS. And then another thing that you can do is inside of your environment variable, I can do something like, let's say above here, I can put node env, and then I can set that to development, something like that. And then here, what I can do is instead of having this hard-coded, I can do something like process.env.nodeEnvironment doesn't equal the string development. So what this will do is it's going to check this. In this case, we have it set as development. So what's going to happen is development doesn't equal development, and that results to false. So that's going to set secure to be false so that we're not hard coding it. And then if I want this to be true, then instead of going everywhere where we do stuff with HTTP only cookies and changing it to be true, instead I can just go to this .env and then change this to anything. I can do it like something like prod or production or live, whatever you want to put here, as long as it's not development. So that's a much more convenient way to change this across your whole application. So now that we have this secure property set appropriately, the next thing I'm going to pass is max age. And max age is going to make it a little bit easier for me to set when this thing is going to expire. Because if I go back here, expires specifies the date object to be the value for the expires. So here I'd have to actually provide a date. And then if I use max age, here I'm just going to specify a number in seconds. So this is going to make it much easier for me to determine when this thing is going to expire. Because then I can do something like, let's say, if I go to my httpOnly auth settings.py, here I did 30 minutes. So for the access token, I can easily set it to expire after 30 minutes. Same thing for the refresh token. I can set it to expire after 1 day. So max age is just a much more convenient property to use. And then here it's going to be in seconds. So in order to match it with what I have on my backend, because there I had 30 minutes for the access token, and then I had 1 day for the refresh token. So here for the access token, I'm going to have 60 seconds. So this is going to represent 1 minute, and then I'm going to have 30 of these. So this is a nice way to set this max age property. And then I'm going to set same site as strict, which is something we went over. Setting it to strict is going to make it so that we can mitigate CSRF. And then I can also set this path. And then for the path, I can do something like API slash. And then I can go even further and set it to something like API slash account slash. But in my case, I'm just going to have it as slash API slash. And then after this, what I need to do is serialize my next cookie, which is going to be for my refresh token. So I'm going to put a comma, enter, and then to make this easier, I'm just going to copy this part here and then paste it below. So here I'm going to do a cookie.serialize where I have my refresh. Then I'm going to grab that refresh from data.refresh. httpOnly is going to be set to true once again. Secure is going to be the exact same. And then this max age, I'm going to set it to 1 day. So here we have 60 seconds, which represents a minute. So then in order to get an hour, I can do 60 times 60. And then to get a day, I can do times 24. So this way I can have the max age matching with what I have in my backend. And then these other values can be the same. So there we are. It's as easy as this to set these cookie values. And then the last thing I need to do is right after here, return a response. So I'm going to return a response.status, which is going to match my Django backend's status, which is 200. And then I'm going to do a .json, where then I can do something like pass a success object in here. And then I'm going to set this to logged in successfully. And then I'm not going to actually make use of this, but if you had, say, alerts in your application, then you could make use of this right here. And there we are. So this is our complete endpoint now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my actions types.js, and then I'm going to add 2 new dispatch types in here. So the first one I'm going to do is export const. I'm going to call this login success. Then I'm going to put in this login success between the quotes. I'm going to paste down a line. And then I'm going to highlight the success part, Command D, and change it to fail. That way I have a login success and a login fail dispatch type. Then I'm going to open up my auth.js in my actions folder. I'm going to bring in these 2 new dispatch types. So my login success and then my login fail. And then let's go ahead and create our new action creator. So I'm going to do that right below here. So to create this, I'm going to do export const login. It's going to take 2 parameters, the username and the password. Then I'm going to have an arrow function with async dispatch with another arrow function. And then in here, what I'm going to do is have my const body first off, where then I can do a json.stringify on the username and the password. That way I can send these along as JSON data to my API endpoint on my Next.js backend API. And then I can do a try catch and then make my API request. So then here I can do const response is await, fetch, and then my endpoint is going to be API/account/login. And then here my method, it's going to be post, because that's what Next.js expects. Then I'm going to have my headers. And then here I'm going to have an accept header, which is going to be application/JSON. And then I'm also going to have my content type, because I have to pass along that username and password. And then I'm also going to pass that body, which is my JSON data with the username and password. And then what we can do from here is have an if check with response.status. If it's equal to 200, then we know that this was successful. And then I can dispatch a type, which is going to be my login success. And then in the else case where we don't get a 200 okay, then what we're going to do is dispatch the login fail. And then I'm going to do the same thing in the catch. And then another thing I want to do is also dispatch that set auth loading and the remove auth loading. So that's another thing I'm going to do right before this try part. So I'm going to dispatch a type of set auth loading, so we can set that loading piece of state to true. And then once this request finishes, I can set it back to false with remove auth loading. So there we are. Now we have our action creator in place. So now I can go back to my login page, and then I can bring in this action creator. So that's my login action creator coming from actions auth. And then what I can do is right over here, I can dispatch that login action creator. Now another thing, if you remember when we did our register, so if I go back into my auth.js with the register, we dispatched this register success. And then this register success, what it did was set this register success to be true. Now when this is true, we redirect to the login page. So what I want to do is have a way to set this back to false. So once we go to the login page, I want to reset this value. So that way, if the user clicks on the register button, they can still go to the register page. I don't want it to be that when they click on the register button, they just keep getting redirected to the login page. That would be a little bit odd. So in order to accomplish this, I'm going to go to my types.js, and I'm going to add another type. So it's going to be export const reset register success. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my auth.js inside of my actions folder. I'm going to bring this in. So reset register success. And then I'm going to go maybe right below this register. This is where I can define this. So I'm going to do export const reset register success. It's going to take no parameters. It's just going to be a normal dispatch. And then all this is going to do is dispatch that type of reset register success. And then I have to make sure I handle all of these different dispatch types. So I'm going to go into my reducers now. I'm going to bring in all of these new dispatch types I made. So my reset register success, my login success, and my login fail. And then let's go ahead and handle these. So when I get my reset register success, I'm going to return spread operator on state. And then I'm going to set that register success piece of Redux state to once again be false. So that way we can access that register page. And then I'm going to have my login success. And then all my login success is going to do is have spread operator on state. And I'm going to adjust that is authenticated piece of Redux state to be true. And then I'm going to have my fail case. So login fail. So in the case where we fail to log in, I'm just going to copy this to make this easier. I'm just going to set this is authenticated to be false instead. So now we have our reducer in place to handle these dispatch types. So now let's go back to this login page. And then instead of just bringing in login, I can also now bring in that reset register success action creator I made. So now what I can do in here is I can uncomment this. I can then dispatch my login, passing in the username and the password. This will go ahead and make that request to my Next.js API endpoint, which is going to make the request to the Django backend server. And then I also want to have a use effect, so I'm going to bring that in here. And then when this component mounts, I also want to make that request to this reset register success. So right below maybe this destructuring, I can have my use effect. Then I'm going to have an empty list here so that when this component mounts, then I can do once again my if checks with dispatch and dispatch doesn't equal null and dispatch doesn't equal undefined. And then if that's the case, then I can do this dispatch with reset register success. So there we are. So now let's go ahead and test out what we have so far. So I'm going to go back to my application. Then inside of this login, I'm just going to do a little refresh, try to log in with my John Doe 1 account, putting in my password. And I'm redirected to the dashboard. So that means that this worked. And then I can even check out my Redux state. And then here I have this is authenticated as true. So perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. I'm going to add a little bit of logic because we have this loading and this loader that we didn't make use of yet. So I might as well go ahead and make use of those. So that's right over here in this button where I'm going to do that. I'm going to add some logic where I check if loading is true. And then if we are loading, I'm going to have a div with my loader component. And then this loader is going to take a couple properties. It's going to have a type of oval, which is going to make it circular. And then it's going to have a color, which I'm going to set equal to #00BFFF, which is going to make it a bluish color. And then I'm going to have the width, which is going to be 50. And I'm going to have the height, which is going to be 50. And then this div, it's just going to make sure that this is centered with a little bit of spacing. So I'm going to have a class name of the flex, justify content center, align items center, and some margin at the top. And then in the case where loading isn't true, then I'm going to return this button. And also let's make sure we get rid of that. So there we are. So now we have this logic in place. So whenever this loading piece of Redux state is true, then we can show that loader. And then I want to do the same thing inside of my register page. So I'm just going to copy this right here so that it's a lot easier to remake this component again inside of my register page. I'm going to open up my register page. And then let's make sure that we have that loading piece of Redux state. So it's right over here. So now I can go down, find that button. And then I can bring in this logic with loading. If it's true, then I'm going to show this loader. Otherwise, I'm going to show this create account button. So I'm going to cut this and put it right between here. And then go ahead and save that. And then another thing I want to do is redirect to the login page when we're successful. So we have this register success. So I'm going to go ahead, copy this, and then right above this return, what I can do is check if register success. Then I can do a router.push to /login. Then we also have to make sure that we have router inside of here. So maybe right below here, I can import my use router from next router. And then I can define that over here. So const router is use router. And then that way I can do that redirect. And then another thing I want to do is also reroute to the dashboard if we're authenticated. So another thing I'm going to do is bring in that is authenticated piece of Redux state. So I can do that, say right here, const is authenticated, which is going to be use selector state with an arrow function, and then I'm going to grab that piece of Redux state from state.auth.isAuthenticated. And then I can grab this, and then right above this if check, I can have another if check with that is authenticated, and then if that's the case, I can do a router.push to /dashboard. And then when I'm doing this right here, I also have to make sure that this router exists. So I'm going to add another check of type of window, not equal to undefined, and is authenticated just like we did in the login page. So now if I go back here and I try to access my register, I get redirected here. Same with the login. So now these routes are protected. So this is how we can add that protection. But now we also need a way to log out. Although this video is getting a little long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pause here, and then in the next video, we're going to see how we can have logout functionality in here as well. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. It goes a long way to help a channel like mine grow and get recognized so others can benefit from the videos I release as well. And I also have links in the description that you can check out. I have one for an e-commerce course that you can check out if you're interested in learning to develop an application like that. I also have a link for joining my Web Development Kings Facebook group. That way, if you want to ask me a personal question about something, then you can go right ahead and do that, and I will happily help you out. It doesn't cost you anything, so if you're scratching your head about something, then you can go right ahead and ask me to help you out. So only questions I probably won't answer if you want to help you build some kind of personal project, as I don't quite have the time for that sort of thing. And then you can also post something in the group itself. That way other developers in the group can help you out with something as well. The group is all about growing your expertise as a developer. So if you're interested in that, then go right ahead and click that link in the description and join the family. Also, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notification bells. That way you don't miss out when I release a new video, and I'll see you in the next one.